Ethan had always had everything he could wish for, or at least that's what everyone around him believed. After inheriting a fortune that placed him at the top of New York's elite, he found himself surrounded by luxury and superficiality. His apartment, on one of the highest floors of a skyscraper overlooking Central Park, was a testament to his achievements. Yet, behind the walls adorned with artwork and designer furniture, there was a void that nothing seemed to fill. A traumatic event from his past haunted him, and the truth was that wealth had not brought him the happiness he had expected. On a rainy autumn morning, as he walked through the bustling streets of Manhattan, Ethan felt particularly lost. Raindrops ran down the car windows and mixed with the city's hustle and bustle. He watched the hurried people, each caught in their own routine, when, on a corner of the street, his eyes were fixed on a scene that froze him. An elderly woman, with tangled gray hair and tattered clothes, was sitting on the ground with a look of despair. Next to her, a small girl, probably no more than 7 years old, was shivering from the cold, wrapped in a worn blanket. Why is no one doing anything? Ethan thought, feeling his heart tighten. He remembered how, in his childhood, he had always been taught to help those in need, but now, faced with this raw reality, he felt powerless. The woman looked up at him, her tired eyes reflecting a mix of pain and determination. "Do you have any spare change, young man?" she asked, her voice trembling but firm. Ethan hesitated, his hands stuffed in his coat pockets. He had plenty of money, but the idea of simply giving a coin felt so empty. I can help in another way," he said, feeling the urgency of the situation taking over him. "What do you and your daughter need?" The woman, who introduced herself as Sarah, looked at the girl and then at Ethan. "We're just trying to find a safe place to sleep. The cold is unbearable and people, well, they're not kind." Ethan felt a lump in his throat. He knew he could offer much more than a temporary shelter. "Why don't you come with me? I have space in my garage. It's better than staying here on the street." Sarah hesitated, looking at her daughter and then at Ethan, as if evaluating his intentions. "We don't want to cause any trouble," she said cautiously. "It won't be any trouble. I need to help somehow," Ethan insisted, his voice filled with sincerity. "Please, accept my help." After a brief moment of reflection, Sarah agreed. "Okay, but only until we find a better place." The drive to the apartment was silent, punctuated only by the sound of rain tapping against the car windows. Ethan drove while contemplating the implications of his decision. Helping those two women meant breaking away from the image of a successful young millionaire that everyone expected him to be. The disapproving looks he might receive from society troubled him, but something inside him yearned for change. When they arrived at the garage, Ethan turned on the light. The space was large, with tools scattered around and a smell of oil and metal. "It may not be much, but it's safe," he said, trying to offer an encouraging smile. "It's better than nothing, I guess," Sarah said, looking around. "Thank you anyway." Lily, the daughter, got out of the car, and upon seeing the space, her eyes lit up with a small glimmer of hope. "It's nice here," she exclaimed, running to explore the place. Ethan watched the interaction between mother and daughter. Sarah tried to maintain her composure, but the fragility in her gaze didn't go unnoticed. He wondered what kind of life they had led and what had brought them to this point. "Are you sure this is okay? I don't want to cause trouble in your life," Sarah asked, her apprehension showing once again. "I insist. If you need anything else, just let me know. I'm here to help," Ethan replied, feeling more confident. As the days passed, Sarah and Lily's presence became part of Ethan's routine. He started to notice how society observed him with curious glances. The idea of a millionaire housing two homeless people wasn't exactly the narrative everyone expected. At social events, he noticed whispers and disapproving looks, but somehow this didn't bother him as much as it used to. What really concerned him was the internal pressure coming from his own conscience. "You're different, Ethan. What have you been up to?" His friend Clara, a famous socialite, asked one day during a cocktail party. "You haven't been seen at parties lately." "I'm just reflecting on some things," Ethan replied, trying to avoid her inquisitive gaze. Reflecting? Don't tell me you're getting involved in charity work. That's not really your thing, she said, laughing. But there was a hint of disdain in her voice. Ethan pressed his lips together, feeling frustration rise. He wanted to shout that he was doing something meaningful, something worth doing, but the words wouldn't come. The image everyone had of him as a young rich man living a life of excess no longer matched his reality. Meanwhile, living with Sarah and Lily began to reveal layers of his own vulnerability. He marveled at the strength Sarah displayed daily, even in the face of adversity. The way she cared for Lily, always with an encouraging smile, even though her eyes betrayed a constant worry. "You're an amazing mother," Ethan commented one night as they sat in a corner of the garage for dinner. "Lily is a very special girl." Sarah smiled, but there was sadness in her eyes. "I do what I can. It's all I have." Ethan felt an impulse to ask more about her past, to understand what had brought her to this point, but hesitated. Something told him the answers wouldn't be easy. The truth was, despite all his money, he felt more lost than ever. The expectations of society weighed heavily on his shoulders, and the idea of being a selfless benefactor seemed like a distant ideal. That night, as he prepared for bed, Ethan looked out his bedroom window. The city lights sparkled like stars, but he couldn't feel any joy. He thought about Sarah and Lily, about how his life had changed since meeting them. A small act of compassion had turned into a moral dilemma, but at the same time, a new hope was beginning to bloom in his heart. "I'm just getting started," he whispered to himself, determined to find his true purpose, even if it meant facing the challenges that lay ahead. Ethan looked at his garage, a space that, in just a few days, had become an improvised home for Sarah and her daughter Lily. The smell of fresh paint and the echoes of childish laughter mingled with the harsh reality that surrounded them. The walls, once merely a place to store tools and equipment, were now adorned with colorful drawings made by Lily, who was trying, in her own way, to adapt to her new life. But despite the attempts to create a cozy environment, tension hung in the air. Sarah, while organizing some donated clothes, couldn't hide the shadow of shame that followed her. The weight of the situation pressed down on her silently, like a dark cloud blocking out the sun. She looked at her daughter, who was playing with a piece of paper, and felt a wave of pain. "I never wanted you to go through this, Lily," she murmured to herself, feeling powerless. The idea of depending on a stranger to survive was more than she could bear. Noticing Sarah's silence and the sadness in her eyes, Ethan tried to break the ice. "Sarah, would you like to go out for coffee? I can make something here," he suggested, trying to find a point of connection. He wanted her to know that they weren't alone in this situation, but Sarah's response was a heavy silence. "No, Ethan, I don't want to be a burden," she finally replied, her voice trembling. "I appreciate your help, but I don't know how to feel comfortable with this." Her gaze shifted away, and Ethan felt the weight of rejection. "I just want to help, truly. You and Lily are welcome here," he insisted, trying to hide the frustration that was beginning to surface. "It's not a burden. It's what anyone would do in my place. In your place, I wouldn't do this. You don't know what it's like to live like this," Sarah said, her voice firmer now but still marked by pain. "I don't want my daughter to see the life I lead. It's not fair to her." Silence fell again, and the tension became palpable. Ethan took a deep breath, trying to understand Sarah's perspective. He, a young millionaire, had lived in a world of privilege, while she fought daily for a shred of dignity. That class difference was like an invisible barrier between them, an abyss that seemed impossible to cross. Lily, who had been absorbed in her drawings until then, sensed the tense conversation and decided to intervene. "Ethan, can you help me with my homework?" she asked, her eyes shining with hope. "The teacher said you're really good at math." Ethan smiled, relieved to find a point of connection with the girl. "Of course, Lily. Let's see what you're studying." He crouched down beside her, and the tension between him and Sarah seemed to ease a bit as he saw the child's excitement. "It's about fractions. I don't understand anything," Lily replied, pulling out a worn notebook. Her concentration made Ethan think of his own childhood, when he spent hours trying to grasp the complexities of math. As they sat on the garage floor, Sarah watched from a distance, feeling a mix of gratitude and insecurity. Ethan's presence, though initially uncomfortable, was starting to seem a bit more welcoming. But the shadow of the past still haunted her. "He doesn't know where we came from," she thought, remembering the nights she huddled against the cold, protecting her daughter. "He doesn't know what it's like to live in fear." Hours passed quickly as Ethan helped Lily with her homework. He was impressed by the girl's intelligence and curiosity, as she asked insightful questions and showed a contagious enthusiasm. "You have a great talent, Lily. With a bit of practice, you'll do really well in math," Ethan praised, watching the smile spread across the girl's face. "Thank you, Ethan. You're the best," Lily exclaimed, and for a moment the garage was filled with laughter, a sense of normalcy that was a relief for both mother and daughter. However, as night fell, the atmosphere changed. Sarah was sitting in a corner, lost in her thoughts, when the silence was broken by a sob. Ethan, who had just finished the study session with Lily, noticed that something was wrong. He approached Sarah, concerned. "Sarah, is everything okay?" Seeing her cry, he felt powerless. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to bother you," she said through her tears, quickly wiping her face with her hands. I'm just so tired." "You don't need to apologize," Ethan said, sitting down beside her. "Talking might help. I'm here to listen." Sarah hesitated, but the words began to flow. "I'm not a good mother. Looking at you and Lily, I see what I've lost. I can't offer anything but a roof over her head. I just wanted her to have a better life. You're doing the best you can, and that's enough." Ethan tried to comfort her. "No one has all the answers. What matters is that you love her." But the words didn't seem to have an effect. Sarah's pain was deeper, an open wound she couldn't heal. "I've lost everything, Ethan. My dignity, my home, my family. And now I'm here, depending on you. It's humiliating." Ethan felt her sadness resonate within him. He had never faced such profound pain, but he understood that Sarah's vulnerability was a reflection of the struggles she faced every day. "You're not alone, Sarah. We'll find a way out of this together," he said, using a gentle tone. Sarah lifted her gaze, and for the first time there was a glimmer of hope in her eyes. "Do you really think that's possible?" "Yes, I believe so. But we need to work together," Ethan replied, determined. "We'll find resources, support, whatever you need. Together we're stronger." The connection between them, though fragile, began to strengthen. Sarah felt that perhaps she could allow herself to believe that things might get better. And for a moment, the garage no longer seemed just a temporary shelter, but a place where new bonds could be formed, where pain could be shared and perhaps healed. As the hours passed and they talked, Ethan realized that beneath Sarah's pain lay an indomitable strength. He knew that the road ahead would be challenging, but seeing the determination in her eyes made him feel ready to face any obstacle. And so, in the darkness of that garage, a new chapter began to unfold for the three of them, one filled with challenges, but also with possibilities. As the sun started to rise over New York, painting the sky with shades of orange and pink, the garage that Ethan had turned into a temporary home for Sarah and Lily was filled with the aroma of fresh coffee, mingling with the scent of toasted bread. Ethan, still in his pajamas, moved about with agility in the makeshift kitchen. He felt a new sense of excitement, a feeling he hadn't experienced in a long time. The presence of Sarah and Lily had brought an unexpected light into his life. "Good morning, girls," he called out as he removed the toast from the skillet. The sizzle filled the room. "Good morning, Ethan," Lily responded, her voice cheerful and lively. She entered the kitchen with her hair tousled, a bit clumsy, but with a smile that lit up her face. "What did you make today?" "A feast fit for royalty, of course. Toast with jelly and coffee. I hope you like it." Ethan turned to see Sarah, who was sitting at the table, watching the scene with a subtle smile. "You're a real chef, Ethan," Sarah said, her voice soft but with a hint of teasing. "I'm starting to think you should open a restaurant." "Who knows? Maybe someday. But for now, I prefer to be your private chef," he replied, winking at Lily, who was reaching for the jar of jelly. The atmosphere was light and relaxed, but Ethan knew there were deeper issues lingering in the air. He had noticed that Sarah, although she was making an effort to adapt to her new life, carried an invisible weight on her shoulders. Conversations about the past were always avoided, and Ethan felt she had a lot to share but hesitated to open up. After breakfast, Ethan offered to help Lily with her homework. She was excited and, at the same time, a bit nervous. Getting accepted into the new school had been a challenge, but she was determined to excel. As she asked questions about math, Ethan noticed how her curiosity lit up her eyes. "Have you ever thought about how math is everywhere around us?" Ethan commented as he explained a concept. "Look at the city, for example. The buildings, the cars, everything is based on numbers." "That's true. I never thought of it that way," Lily replied, her face brightening. "Do you really like math?" "Actually, I enjoy solving problems, whether in math or in real life," Ethan said, looking at Lily with seriousness. "And what about you? What do you like to do?" "I think I like drawing," Lily said shyly. "I draw whenever I can, but I'm not sure if I'm good at it." "Drawing is an amazing way to express your emotions. You should show me your drawings someday," Ethan encouraged, feeling increasingly connected to her. That afternoon, while Lily focused on her homework, Ethan sat next to Sarah, who watched her daughter with a look of love and concern. There was something in Sarah's expression that intrigued him, and he decided to try to break the ice. "Are you settling in well here?" he asked, trying to keep his tone casual. "It's different. But I'm grateful for your help, Ethan," Sarah replied, looking down as if the words were a burden. "I just want Lily to have a better life. She's lucky to have you as a mother. You're strong, Sarah. It's hard for me to imagine what you've been through," Ethan said, trying to encourage the conversation. "If you want to, you can share. I'm here to listen." "It's not easy talking about the past," Sarah began, hesitating. I don't want Lily to know everything, you know? I want to protect her. I understand, but maybe sharing could lighten the load a bit. Sometimes sharing the pain can make it easier to bear," Ethan suggested, his voice soft and understanding. Sarah took a deep breath, her eyes wandering off into the distance. "It's complicated. I'm not just a mother struggling. What happened to me? It's not a pretty story." "I'm not here to judge, just to listen," he replied, his sincerity evident. "When I was Lily's age, my life was very different. I had a family, a home, but everything changed. Life took everything from me, and I don't know if I'm ready to face it all again." "I don't know if I should tell her," Sarah said, her voice heavy with pain. "You're stronger than you think, Sarah, and Lily needs to know that you're a fighter. It could inspire her," Ethan said, encouraging her. Sarah looked at him, her eyes reflecting a mix of gratitude and fear. "Ethan, I appreciate all of this. You don't know what it's like to have someone who cares, but there are things you still don't know about me." The tension in the air was almost palpable. Ethan sensed that he was on the verge of discovering something significant. "If you feel ready, I'll be here. I don't want you to carry this alone," he said, his tone full of empathy. At that moment, the garage door opened, and Lily entered, interrupting the moment of vulnerability. "Hi, what are you guys talking about?" she asked, with a sparkle of curiosity in her eyes. "Nothing much. Just talking about what you want to be when you grow up," Ethan said quickly, trying to keep the conversation light. "Oh, I want to be an artist. I want to draw and paint," Lily exclaimed with enthusiasm. "And you can do it. With dedication and practice, you can become a wonderful artist," Ethan praised, winking at her. Ethan watched as a smile spread across Lily's face and felt a wave of satisfaction. He realized that in some way, he was becoming a positive figure in their lives, and that gave him a new sense of purpose. But the unresolved conversation with Sarah still lingered in his mind, an unanswered question that left him unsettled. As the day went on, Ethan focused on helping Lily with her lessons while Sarah watched, a shy smile on her lips. He didn't know when or how Sarah would open up about her past, but he had a feeling that when she did, it would change his life forever. By the end of the day, as they were preparing for bed, Ethan sat down with Sarah one last time. "How about we do something fun tomorrow? Maybe a walk in the park? I think it would be good for all three of us," he suggested. "That would be great," Sarah agreed, her gaze still a bit distant but with a hint of hope. "And maybe you can show me some of your drawings, Lily," Ethan said, looking at the girl who was snuggled up in her makeshift bed. "Yes, "I'll draw something amazing for you," Lily replied excitedly before settling under the covers. Ethan watched the two of them for a moment, feeling grateful for the new dynamic that had formed. He knew that secrets still needed to be revealed, but for now, the friendship that was developing seemed enough. The connection between them was deepening, and despite Sarah's dark past, the future seemed promising. Ethan sat at his kitchen table, a space that now felt more like a battlefield than a refuge. The morning light filtered through the windows, brightening the room, but he couldn't shake the sense of oppression that surrounded him. The charity event he was planning was approaching, and the pressure to make everything perfect was palpable. He knew it wasn't just about raising funds, it was a matter of image and proving to society that his intentions were genuine. "Are you okay, Ethan?" Sarah asked, entering the kitchen with a worried look. She had noticed his distant expression, as if he were lost in a maze of thoughts. Ethan forced a smile. "I'm just thinking about a few things for the event. I hope people show up." "They will. You're doing something important." Sarah came closer, placing a comforting hand on his arm. "And you don't have to do it alone. We're here to help." The sincerity in her words made Ethan feel a warmth growing inside him. He remembered the days when he had isolated himself in his mansion, surrounded by people who only cared about his money. Now, there was Sarah, a woman who had faced more challenges than he could imagine, offering unconditional support. I don't want to disappoint anyone, especially you and Lily," Ethan confessed, looking into Sarah's eyes. "This event is a chance for us to show that we can make a difference, that we can help others like you." "You're already making a difference, Ethan. Look at us. You've given us a home." Sarah smiled, but there was a veiled sadness in her eyes. It was something she hadn't shared yet, but Ethan felt it was on the verge of emerging. On the day of the event, the atmosphere was festive. Ethan had organized everything with care, from the decorations to the buffet. The garage, which had once been merely a storage space, was transformed into a welcoming venue filled with lights and neatly arranged tables. He wanted Sarah and Lily to feel comfortable, to know they were a part of the new life he was building. Lily was thrilled. "Look, Mom! There are so many balloons!" She pointed at the colorful decorations that adorned the space. "And those sweets look delicious!" "Yes, sweetie. It's going to be a great party," Sarah replied, trying to mask the anxiety that was consuming her. Despite her daughter's joy, part of her was worried about the possibility of being recognized. The past still haunted her, and the idea of exposing herself again to a group of people who might judge her was terrifying. Ethan noticed the tension in Sarah. "Are you okay? You don't need to be nervous. Let's just enjoy the moment," he said, trying to reassure her. "I know, but what if someone recognizes me?" Sarah whispered, looking around nervously. "I'm not ready to face that." "I'll be right by your side. No one will hurt you," Ethan assured, holding her hand firmly. As the guests arrived, the atmosphere became more vibrant. Ethan was excited, greeting investors and friends, while Sarah and Lily remained a bit on the sidelines, observing the activity. Sarah felt like a fish out of water, but Ethan's presence made her feel a bit more secure. The event was in full swing, and conversations mingled with the soft music that filled the air. Sarah was starting to relax when, suddenly, a familiar figure appeared in the crowd, a woman with blonde hair and piercing blue eyes that Ethan recognized instantly, his former friend, Melissa. "Ethan, what a surprise to see you here," she said, with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Melissa had always enjoyed being the center of attention, and this moment was no different. "Hi, Melissa. It's good to see you," Ethan replied, trying to suppress the discomfort that was beginning to rise in his chest. He knew her presence could bring complications. "And what do we have here? A charity event? How noble," Melissa said, looking around, but her gaze quickly landed on Sarah. Her smile vanished instantly. "Wait, I know you." Melissa's voice suddenly turned sharp. "You're Sarah, aren't you?" Sarah's heart raced. She exchanged a quick glance with Ethan, who immediately positioned himself in front of her, trying to shield her from the intrusion. "Melissa, I don't think this is the right time to... I knew you were running, but I never thought you'd be hiding out here." Melissa's voice was rising, drawing the attention of other guests. Don't you think you should present yourself better, Sarah? Everyone here is wondering who the woman being taken in by this millionaire is. Ethan felt the tension in the air intensify. He couldn't let the situation spiral out of control. Melissa, please, this isn't what you think. Sarah and Lily are here for help, just like all of us. Of course they are, Ethan. You've always had a good heart. But maybe you should remember who you're getting involved with. Melissa shot a disdainful look at Sarah, who was frozen and visibly shaken. That's not fair, Lily shouted, her small body trembling with indignation. Mommy is an amazing person, and you have no right to speak like that. Ethan crouched beside Lily, trying to calm her down. It's okay, Lily. Let's take a deep breath. Don't let this affect you. But Sarah couldn't stay silent. Anger and humiliation consumed her. You don't know anything about me, Melissa. I might not have what you have, but I have dignity. How lovely dignity, Melissa retorted, laughing sarcastically. But what will you do when the truth comes out, Sarah? What will happen when everyone knows who you really are? The silence that followed was deafening. Guests exchanged confused glances, and Ethan felt the weight of the world on his shoulders. He knew Sarah's past was complicated, but he never imagined it could affect them in such a public way. Enough, Melissa, Ethan exclaimed, his voice echoing through the garage. You don't have the right to treat her this way. If you don't have anything good to say, it's best you leave. Melissa crossed her arms defiantly. You'll regret this, Ethan. But fine, I'll let you play the hero. Let's see where this leads. As she walked away, the tension in the air remained. Ethan turned to Sarah, who was pale and had tear-filled eyes. I'm sorry. I didn't know she was coming. I should have protected you. You can't protect someone from their past, Ethan, Sarah murmured, her voice trembling. I don't know if I'm ready to face this. I don't know if I can stay here. You don't have to do this alone. We're in this together, and I'll support you no matter what happens, Ethan said, holding her hands firmly. Let's take it one step at a time. For now, let's try to make the best of what we have here. But even as he spoke, he knew that the shadow of Sarah's past was closer than ever, and the event, which was supposed to be a celebration, had now become the stage for a conflict that could change everything. The night had fallen over New York, and the fine rain that had collected on the sidewalks reflected the city lights like a shimmering carpet. Ethan was in the garage, restless, watching the water trickling down the windows. The charity event had been a success, but the commotion caused by Melissa recognizing Sarah still lingered like a heavy cloud. He felt the tension between them, an invisible barrier that seemed to have formed instantly after her revelation. Sarah was sitting in a corner of the garage, wrapped in a blanket Ethan had offered. Her gaze was distant, and the shadows of the night highlighted the lines of worry on her face. He approached her hesitantly, unsure of how to begin the conversation they both needed to have. Sarah, he said, trying to break the silence, I don't want you to feel this way. What that woman said was unfair. She looked up, her expression a mix of pain and anger. Unfair? Ethan, you don't understand. My past isn't something I can just ignore. That woman, she wasn't wrong. I am who I am because of the choices I made and the consequences that followed. Ethan frowned. But you don't need to be ashamed. You're an amazing mother and a strong person. What happened in the past doesn't define who you are now. Sarah let out a bitter laugh. Definitions are complicated, Ethan. Sometimes people have a very clear idea of what we're trying to hide. And when it comes to light, there's no going back. He sat down beside her, trying to grasp the depth of the pain she was feeling. What do you want me to do? How can I help? Just don't look at me with pity. That's all I ask. I'm not a charity case, and you're not a hero. I'm just a woman trying to protect her daughter. I don't see you like that, Ethan replied, his voice firm. You're more than that. And Lily, she adores you. She needs you, and I want to help. Sarah looked down, her fingers nervously twisting the blanket. Do you think this is easy for me? Accepting help from someone like you? Ethan sighed. Class differences don't change who we are on the inside, but if you don't let me in, I'll never understand what really happened, and I want to. The silence that followed was heavy, as if the unspoken words hovered between them. Finally, Sarah lifted her head, her eyes now filled with determination. "Do you really want to know? Are you ready to hear about who I am?" "Yes," Ethan replied, adrenaline coursing through his veins. "I'm ready." She took a deep breath, as if preparing to dive into deep and unknown waters. "I'm not just a homeless woman. I'm Sarah Montgomery, daughter of one of the wealthiest families in New York. When my father died, everything changed. The fortune I was supposed to inherit vanished, and I was cast out." Ethan felt his heart race. "But why didn't you tell me before?" "Because I'm not the same person I was then. I ran from wealth and superficiality. When you found me, I was escaping the life that was imposed on me. I didn't want anyone to know who I was, not even you." "You don't need to hide from me," Ethan said, confusion mixing with newfound understanding. "Why didn't you go back? If your inheritance still exists—" "Because it doesn't work that way," she interrupted, her voice choked. "There were people who wanted my money, Ethan. People who didn't care about me. I just wanted to protect Lily from all of that." The rain began to fall harder, beating against the garage windows as if the world outside were reflecting the storm within them. Ethan stood up and started pacing the garage, trying to process the revelation. "Are you saying that you're rich? That you have a lost fortune?" "Yes, but that doesn't change anything. I don't want that life. I don't want to go back to that world. I just want to take care of my daughter and find a safe place for us." "And what if I said I could help find that fortune?" Ethan asked, stopping in front of her, the idea forming in his mind. "No, Ethan, you don't understand. It's not just about money. It's about who I am, what I left behind. And if you help me, you might end up getting involved in something much bigger than you realize." "I don't care about that," he said earnestly. "I want to help you rebuild, to have the life you deserve. And Lily, too." "And what if I don't even know who I really am?" Sarah questioned, vulnerability in her voice tightening Ethan's heart. "What if the person I was no longer fits with who I am now?" "That's a journey you don't have to take alone," Ethan replied, holding her hands. "I'm here, and Lily needs you. You're the only mother she knows. No matter what happened before, you're still the Sarah who loves her daughter." She looked into his eyes, and Ethan could see a glimmer of hope igniting. "Do you really believe that?" "Yes, and if you let me, we'll find out together." The rain continued to fall, but inside the garage, a new energy was forming. Sarah hesitated, but soon her expression softened slightly, as if the pressure she felt was beginning to ease. Maybe I could try." Ethan smiled, a genuine smile that lit up his face. "That's all I ask. Let's take the first step together. I'll help you rediscover who you are." She nodded slowly, and Ethan felt that, despite all the challenges they would face, a new possibility was on the horizon. The past was still a burden, but together they could find a way to deal with it, to build a new life that included truth, pain, and, above all, hope. Ethan was stunned. Sarah's words still echoed in his mind as he tried to process the revelation that she was an heiress to a lost fortune. The weight of the information made him feel as if he were in a maze, unsure of which path to take. What did this mean for him? For Sarah and Lily? He had always believed that his life as a millionaire was filled with opportunities, but now, alongside Sarah and Lily, he began to see wealth in a new light, a light that illuminated not only opulence, but also the loneliness and isolation it often brought. Sitting in the garage, the silence became unbearable. Sarah looked at Ethan with a mix of hope and fear. She knew that the truth could either drive him away or bring them closer together. The insecurity in her gaze made Ethan's heart ache. He wanted to understand, wanted to support, but the idea of a troubled past and a lost fortune was a burden he didn't know how to carry. "You know, Ethan," Sarah began, breaking the heavy silence between them, "the life I had wasn't perfect. Fortune doesn't bring happiness. I've lived through things I wouldn't wish on anyone. I was deceived, manipulated, and it cost me everything. I just wanted to protect Lily." Ethan nodded, his hands nervously intertwined. I understand, Sarah, but what now? What are you planning to do? What does this mean for you and Lily? I don't know, she replied, the vulnerability in her voice palpable. The only thing I know is that I don't want history to repeat itself. My past haunts me, and I'm afraid it might affect Lily. She deserves a better future. At that moment, the garage door opened, interrupting the conversation. A tall man, dressed in a dark suit and with a serious expression, entered. He seemed out of place in the simple, unadorned space. Ethan immediately stood up, the tension in the air escalating. Sorry to interrupt, the man said, adjusting his glasses. My name is Robert. I'm Sarah's lawyer. Ethan felt a knot tighten in his stomach. The lawyer's presence indicated that something significant was about to be revealed. What are you doing here? He asked, his voice tinged with suspicion. I need to speak with you and Sarah. It's about her inheritance, Robert said, his gaze fixed on Sarah. There are alarming updates we need to discuss. Alarming? Sarah repeated, apprehension clear in her tone. What do you mean by that? Robert took a deep breath before continuing. Unfortunately, the situation with your inheritance is not as straightforward as we thought. There are people trying to contest the inheritance, and worse, there's a movement to destabilize what's left of it. Ethan frowned. Who's behind this? What does this mean for Sarah and Lily? I can't reveal all the details right now, Robert said. But there's a name you need to know. It's crucial that you stay alert. What's the name? Sarah asked, her voice trembling. James Hawthorne, Robert replied, his expression grave. He's responsible for the downfall of your fortune. He manipulated your family and is determined to ensure you don't recover anything. Robert's words hit Ethan like a punch to the stomach. He looked at Sarah, who seemed to have been dealt a devastating blow. Her expression wavered between disbelief and despair. James Hawthorne? She murmured, as if trying to process the name. Yes, Robert continued. He has a history of dishonesty and manipulation. If he finds out you're starting to claim what's rightfully yours, he won't hesitate to do whatever it takes to stop you. Ethan felt torn. He knew Sarah needed support, but the revelation that the man behind her downfall might be close to him made him uneasy. The idea that their lives were intertwined in such a complicated way was overwhelming. I can't let this happen, Ethan said, determination growing within him. Sarah, you're not alone. I'm going to help you face this. But how? Sarah asked, tears in her eyes. What can you do? He's powerful, Ethan. He has connections you can't even imagine. I'm not sure yet, Ethan replied, his voice firm. But if he's behind this, we need to figure out how to fight him. I'll use my influence, my resources. I can't let him hurt you and Lily again. At that moment, their connection deepened. Sarah smiled, still with tears streaming down her face, but visibly relieved. Thank you, Ethan. You don't know how much this means to me. The atmosphere in the garage seemed to change. The fear that had been hanging in the air was now being replaced by a new hope. With Ethan by Sarah and Lily's side, a light began to shine on the dark horizon of their lives. Robert, noticing the shift, added, We need to act quickly. The first thing we should do is gather documents that prove your inheritance. Do you have anything that might help us, Sarah? I have some old documents in a box, she replied, her mind starting to work. But I'm not sure if they're still in a safe place. We can search together, Ethan suggested. Let's find everything you have. The unlikely team of Ethan, Sarah, and Robert came together in an effort to face what was to come. With every step they took, Sarah's past became a more complex part of Ethan's life, but also an opportunity for transformation and redemption. As they prepared for the impending battle, Ethan realized that his life as a millionaire had never been as meaningful as it was now, standing alongside Sarah and Lily. He was ready to confront the ghosts of the past, not just to help Sarah, but to discover who he truly was in the process.